Well, hello, Greenland Hills. I greet you today during a quiet moment of respite in the heat of the day in our hotel room here in Malaga, Spain. It's been a busy week. We've seen a lot of things as we've toured through Granada, Cordoba, Seville, and here in Malaga, looking at the art and architecture, particularly of churches. One of the questions I've been considering as we tour through all of this is what it means to live together, what it means during this period of convivencia, to live in harmony, in tolerance, side by side, coexisting, people of different faiths, people of different viewpoints, and how that works itself out in public life, in our monuments, in all the things that matter. Here we see examples of living side by side, the Giralda or bell tower of the Seville Cathedral, which used to be a minaret, with its Islamic forms standing next to Gothic towers and modern carillons, or an Islamic garden standing next to the Gothic cathedral, or the most sacred part of the original mosque incorporated as a chapel, or a crucifix hung underneath Mudahar arches. We can literally see Renaissance and Gothic structures with their intricate webs of ribbing placed on top of the simple horseshoe arches of the original mosque. One of the things we also got to witness when we were in Seville is a protest. Unbeknownst to us, Greenpeace had scheduled a protest at the monument that we were visiting, the Ceres de Seville, and here are some pictures. Their signs read, "Tax polluters tax the super rich, and they're ruining the planet and you're paying for it." This was of particular interest to me, of course, since we've had a lot of protest in the United States recently, and it doesn't always end peacefully. In fact, it seems less and less it ends peacefully, even when the protests are peaceful. These protesters from Greenpeace were quite peaceful, although they were interrupting a public space and draping themselves, rappelling from a public monument. The police were present, but in fact left the scene before we left, and left the scene before the protesters were finished unfurling their banners. So I don't know if they were ever arrested or what the consequences were. But there was no pushing or shoving. There were no handcuffs, no zip ties that we saw. In fact, they had quietly roped off the area where others were supporting the protesters with bottles of water and making sure that they were safe, others from the Greenpeace movement, presumably. So all were coexisting while these radicals from the left protested on behalf of climate change and creation, which of course can't speak for itself, while a major UN summit on development and finance was taking place or launching across town. One of the other things I've been doing this week is reading from the theologian David Ford in preparation for 2 lectures that I'll give in the coming weeks in Detroit and Oxford. David Ford engages the French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, and his examination of Levinas resonated with me as these thoughts bounced around my head this week. He says, to read Levinas with the prophets of biblical Israel in mind is to be reminded of 2 of their main themes, which are inseparably interwoven: rejection of idolatry and passionate concern for right living with other people. He goes on to describe Levinas' approach, saying, the symptoms of a civilization in the grip of totalitarian dynamics are multifarious. There are allergic relations between people. We see others as threats to our freedom, and the normal state of life as war or compromises between people and groups in tension, rather than seeing human subjectivity as welcoming the other in hospitality and peace. Whole systems of philosophy, economics, government, organization, and activity are created which are inimical to the pluralism of the face-to-face, and whose best efforts at justice are continually distorted by their idolatries. In reaction, there are often protests in the name of a unique human subjectivity which itself becomes idolatrous, since the subject is not seen in the relation of responsibility to the other. I want to read that last point one more time and let it sink in. In reaction, there are often protests in the name of a unique human subjectivity, which itself easily becomes idolatrous, since the subject is not seen in the relation of responsibility to the other. Now, David Ford wrote this all the way back in 1999, but I wrote out in the column, MAGA? ? How is it possible that this could describe something unfolding 26 years later? It made me start to think on this eve of July 4th, what is the difference between patriotism and idolatry? And when does patriotism become idolatry? Is it possible that what Levinas is saying is that patriotism becomes idolatrous when the subject who believes they are expressing patriotism is not seen in relation of responsibility to the other? In other words, in the words of the prophets of Israel, they're not concerned with right living with other people. They're not concerned with convivencia, with healthy coexistence. I'm very excited that the Reverend Dr. Emily Nelms Chastain, the newest Perkins faculty person, is going to be with you this weekend to lead you in worship and to bring you a good word. Her scripture from Luke is Jesus sending out of the 72. I have no idea what she's going to say, but I do know that her title is A Prophetic Hospitality. And so I presume she's going to have a word about what it means to be hospitable and what it means to be hospitable in a countercultural, prophetic way, probably, I'm going to presume, in the tradition of the prophets of Israel, in the tradition of seeking right living and justice for all people, in the tradition of what it means to be responsible to and for the other. This strikes me as a particularly important thing for us to consider on the eve of what has just happened in Washington and the direction that things are moving. It will be even more important for us over the coming weeks and months to discuss what it means to be faithful Christians, to be responsible to and for the other. I look forward to being reunited with you and back in ministry with you again soon, so that we can continue to explore what it means to provide a witness to the world, to our community, to Dallas, as the people of Greenland Hills, who I hope offer prophetic hospitality, who I hope take up responsibility for the other, who seek a convivencia, a peaceful, flourishing coexistence for all persons. In the meantime, my prayer for each of you is grace and peace.